Welcome back to Ireland AM. Now, April the 29th, Sean Tyrrell was given a 4-month jail sentence for offences under Coco's Law against his former partner, MEP Kathleen Funchion.
Kathleen joins us now to tell us more about her experience and the work she's doing to help others in similar situations. Good morning to Kathleen. Thanks so much for joining us on this, which I'm sure is a difficult story for you to get into. And we were all shocked when we read about it in the papers as well. Can you tell us a little bit, take us back to the start of your relationship with Sean?
Yeah, so first of all, I appreciate you covering this because I think it's important for other people as well. And that's kind of what gave me the, I suppose, I wanted to talk about my situation for others. We were together since 2016, met kind of during my general election campaign of 2016. Actually, we had known each other on and off, as in I had met him at various events. You know, the way you'd meet someone, hello, how are you type thing. But actually really started spending time together in the run-up to the general election of 2016. And then in June of that year, we got together as a couple. And for me, like, we were together for 6 years now. There was on and off periods during that. I think, you know, it was described as dysfunctional at times, and hindsight is hindsight for a reason. And looking back, I can really see that that was the case, and that there was kind of elements of control probably from very early on. And it can be very hard to identify that, first of all, because it's very subtle. It happens gradually. You really doubt yourself. You really question yourself. And I think that that's an important point to make in all of this for anybody else that thinks they might be in a similar situation, that you do kind of say, you know, am I overreacting here? You're questioning yourself. You're questioning your judgment. You lose a huge amount of confidence in yourself. And that's really that's what they want to do, someone who wants to control a situation. So, like, you're looking at it thinking, how can I make this better? How can I resolve this? How can I make it work? So you say to yourself, okay, I'll hand over my phone. You can go through it. There's nothing to hide. But actually, someone who wants to have control, nothing will ever be good enough for them. There will always be something. So it's kind of coming to terms with that, I think, was the most difficult part for me, because by coming to terms with that, you had to realise this is not a good situation, this is not a healthy situation, and this is not a relationship you can stay in.
It's called coercive control for a reason, because it is coercive and it's done under the radar. For you and Sean Tyrrell, you had run a successful campaign to get into the Dáil. You're currently an MEP. And he was co-opted into your council seat. So you were very combined, like your work and social and personal lives were all in together. Now, you're saying, looking back, you didn't notice these things, but you said something there, like, why not just give him my phone? What were the things that were actually happening in your day-to-day life that you look now and go, oh my God, that is not okay?
So I think it all comes down to control, in the sense that somebody wanting to know, you know, where you are. And I suppose, to a certain extent, it's very easy to know where I am when you're in the public eye. You know, you have your schedule, you're in the Dáil, you have your clinics. But I suppose your time, like control of your time, you know, if you were left, you know, there was incidents, you know, if I had left Dublin at a certain time and I wasn't home by a certain time, or I wasn't a certain distance down the road, there was questions. And like who you were associating with, who you were hanging out with, was always a really big issue. You know, there was definitely jealousy there, serious jealousy. And it's very, very difficult. It's very difficult for anyone in any situation, in any relationship. But when you're in the public eye and you're dealing with all sorts of different scenarios and situations and people, and you really don't know who you're going to come across from a day to day, you kind of, what happens to you then is you live on eggshells, and you're thinking, oh gosh, how is this going to look now? Or what is this going to be perceived as? Or, you know, you're always trying to be like 10 steps ahead to think what kind of potential issue is happening here now. And
did you feel you couldn't ask for help? Or did you feel that you were nearly trapped a little bit?
I suppose what I felt is that I was always trying to find a solution. Yeah. You know, because I really, you know, as I've said, I really loved Sean. Like, I really wanted this relationship to work. For me, this was it. We were going to spend the rest of our lives together, and I was like determined to see how we could figure this out, you know. And I really did think, you know, if you change this, if you do that. And it's only afterwards, and when, like you're saying, when you do get the help and you do speak to a combination of professionals, but also trusted family and friends. And I think that can't be forgotten in it too, that like obviously you need the proper professional help, but you also do need someone to turn to. And the one thing I would like to say, if you are out there listening and you think you have a friend or a family member in this situation, just don't be judgmental on them. You know, make sure you're a listening ear, that they can come to you. Because I was very lucky that I had that, you know, and you could say, you know, I need to talk to you about this. It's going to sound absolutely crazy, but that you'd know the other person wouldn't judge you. So that's a really important thing, I think, as well.
He was convicted under Kokos Law, which is that is to do with the sharing of intimate images without consent. Because anyone who has read these reports, they know that you were constantly accused of being unfaithful, something that you couldn't prove. There was contact with journalists, and then this sharing of intimate images. What happened?
So I suppose the court case then situation, so I went to the Guardi in August 2022. I reached out to the Amber Women's Refuge as well. Now, I would have worked, you know, I would have been at various events with Amber, would have tied in, would have, you know, kind of been, you know, a good advocate saying, like, please go contact Amber and stuff like that, you know, locally in Kilkenny, and really kind of admire their service. But so I reached out to Lisa Morris, who was the manager there, to speak to her about the situation, and she was incredible. And then I went to the Gardaí after one particularly difficult weekend in August 22, when all these barrage of emails were coming in terms of the screenshots of the contact with journalists, and you know, that they obviously at that point.
What was he going to say to the journalists?
So he had contacted the journalists and had various stories about me, that I had been abusive towards him, financially abusive, you know, violent, stuff like that. And he had said that he had the screenshots basically said that he had been in contact with journalists, and, you know, that he was going to, I had a certain amount of time, and I suppose one of the key parts then at that point was he wanted me to do this lie detector test to prove that I had been faithful throughout the relationship. And it actually got to a point where I was considering that. And yeah, so like that's actually how far into this that you can go, where you're like, you need to, you know, if someone had said to me, someone had come to you telling you that story, you think, oh my gosh, you know, you need to try to get out, you need to make a plan.
But in terms of reporting it though, because we know this domestic abuse is just, it's alarmingly on the rise in Ireland. We're seeing the figures coming out. But in terms of having to make a victim impact statement, having to go through the courts and stuff, we talk about it all being so difficult for the victims.
Yeah.
For you, what was it like?
Yeah, so I do feel like the Protective Services Unit in Kilkenny and the Gardaí were amazing and really supportive. Like, they have a really difficult job, but they managed to do that, but also be supportive, like in terms of just what to expect, you know, the court process, even that everyone is in at a certain time. They do what they call a call over hearing. That's, you know, then they schedule the cases, you know, that the possibility is that there could be an adjournment. So I did feel that was, like, I had good support. However, the victim impact statement, it took me a very long time to actually write it. I couldn't get myself to sit down to write it because, like, I just knew it was going to be a really hard couple of days after physically writing that out. And it was difficult to, I actually remember, like, being a bit relieved when I had it written, and then you have to submit it, and then I was waiting to see, you know, what would come back. And then on the actual day, and like, I'm in the public eye, I've spoken at, you know, I'm in debates, different things, but I was sick to my stomach, physically sick. You know, the nights before, couldn't kind of really concentrate, couldn't sleep, dreading getting into the box to read the statement, just because it's so personal and it's very different, I suppose. And it did make me think it is very, very difficult for people. And, you know, I've always had admiration for people who come forward, but even more so after going through this and seeing that, like, it's not easy, because you're reliving the whole thing then yourself as well.
Well done for doing it. I know that there's an awful lot of talk about counselling notes, things being used against victims in courts and things that people are dealing with. How are you doing now? You're an MEP, you're working on things like Valerie's Law, you're working on very big things. How are you doing after this? Sean Tyrrell was given a sentence of 4 months. How are you feeling?
Yeah, so mixed, I suppose. I really was relieved on the day of the court. I really genuinely felt vindicated. I felt listened to, and I did come out, as I have kind of described, nearly feeling physically lighter. And I was expecting I would have some level of relief, but I wasn't expecting it to be that great. So that was amazing. It is difficult. Like, there's parts of it that will never go away in terms of how I feel about trusting people, letting people into my life, very, very cautious around that. So, and I had said in the victim impact statement, it's difficult to have to acknowledge and admit that about your own life, but that is something that has changed for me. And, I don't see that changing anytime in the near future. But I'm really glad that I did go all the way with it, because when you're in that situation and that's happening and you're being bombarded with all these messages, it is such a lonely place and it's such an isolating place, because you're like, what do I do? Where do I go? And then when you do finally reach out, it's kind of like that saying, a problem shared is a problem halved. You do feel, well, I certainly felt anyway, that, it's frustrating, it's long, but at least it felt like I was going somewhere with it,
Absolutely.
Huge congratulations, because for anyone who's heard that today, who has read the story, the fact that you followed through with it, something that's so insidious, and as you said, you feel like you're going crazy. Thank you for doing it, and thank you for talking to us today. We really appreciate it.
We want our politicians to be leading from the front, and you've done that here as well. Sinn Féin member of the European Parliament, Kathleen Funchion, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kathleen, and you can go to virginmedia.ie/helplines if you want any help at all with anything that you've heard this morning.